I'm Shannon Murray, class of '94, director of Cornell Silicon Valley program. Thank you for coming to Google, and I especially want to thank the hospitality of all their staff, all the alumni that have worked on the event with us. Hannah was here working on name tags like 2 hours before the event and brought a whole cast of alumni with her to help and greet you all. And their event staff, Holly back there somewhere, has been running around all day. And Sanita from Google Relations literally, I think, moved mountains to get us here tonight. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot of events going on here on campus. And so they have really bent over backwards to be here. So I just want to, maybe we could give them a little bit of a round of applause. Okay. So I'm going to introduce Bob Constable to you, and many of you already know Bob because he and I have been partners now in the Valley for, I think, almost since the beginning of my job, maybe 8 years. And he's been out here many, many times and is one of our most beloved faculty speakers and constant visitors to the Valley. I'm going to say something for those of you, and even those of you who know him, this remark is probably going to surprise you. Bob has been on the faculty 40 years. 40. And here's another interesting little factoid. Cornell was founded in 1865, but did not actually teach class until 1868. And the Faculty of Computer and Information Sciences was founded 100 years later in 1965. Yeah, I had that right. Sorry. The 40-year thing is still tripping me. At any rate, it didn't open for another 3 years, and Bob was originally on that opening group. So he is the founding dean of and the chair of CS, and he has been the dean now for 6 years. Bob, is that right? So, Nine. Okay, I'm sorry. My handwriting here. Okay. And he is one of only 2 deans that is still active in research. And one of the biggest things that has happened recently for him is that he has a new 5-year grant from the Air Force to work on security protocols. So I think you're still going to be seeing him active in the research community. So Bob, I want to thank you again for bringing out such a huge audience, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm sure I didn't bring out the audience. Amit did, and we'll introduce him in just a moment. But let me clarify that bit about the history there. I shouldn't have gone into the history of Cornell to such detail, but I used to tell people, okay, look, the computer science department was founded 100 years after Cornell was, but the university didn't start working until 3 years later, 1868. And the computer science department didn't start working until they hired the assistant professors. And I was one of the first assistant professors. The founder of the department is here tonight. It's Juris Hartmanis, and maybe Juris, you would stand up. So Juris founded the department there back in 1965, and has kept our department in the top ranks. You know, we're rated in the top 5 in the country. Little tiny department tucked away in Ithaca, New York, still competing in the big leagues. And one of the reasons we do that is the quality of the students we've attracted and what they do, both graduates and undergrads. They're better known to you out here than the faculty. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you and work with you. We're going to actually have an interview here, Amit Singhal and I, and you all know Amit. But for those of you at Google who don't know, there are 4 Google Fellows. This is the highest ranking engineer at the company, and you get to be a Google Fellow for making contributions that are essential and seminal to the founding of the company. Of those 4 fellows, 2 of them are Cornellians. One of them is Sanjay Gemawat, and the other is Amit Singhal. And Amit, yeah, so that's not bad. And you're going to hear from Amit tonight. He got his PhD in 1997. He came, and we'll find out when I ask him questions why he came to Cornell and from where he came to Cornell. He came to work with Gerard Salton, who passed away during the time Amit was a student, and Claire Carty, who's here tonight, was took the role of supervisor, and we want to thank Claire for that. So, Claire, maybe you could stand up for a minute. And so here's Claire Carty, who is... Yeah. Claire is the Charles and Barbara Weiss Director of the Information Science Program at Cornell. So after getting his PhD, Amit spent 4 years at Bell Labs, and during that entire 4-year period, they seemed to have been trying to recruit him to Google. Finally, 8 years ago in 2000, he joined and became the one in charge of the Google search engine. And when I asked him about that, why did you take on this job? He said, I'd rather write code than read it. So we'll hear about that in just a moment. And it's kind of awkward. I mean, here I am introducing him, but I'm not going to step off the stage. So Amit's going to come up and say something to you, maybe just hi. And then I'm going to start asking questions, and he'll take as long as he wants to answer them any way he wants. So Amit, come up and say hi.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. That was very kind of you. It's all lie, of course, but I don't mind it.
Okay. Well, one of the first things I want people to hear about is how, from a childhood in the 22,000-foot peaks of the Himalayas, you came to be the master of the Google search engine. How did that...
It's for him.
How did you start?
You don't want to, sure.
No. He's showing his youth, right? Here you got a professor who's been around for 40 years. He said, you can sit down, I'll stand. But so, Amit, tell us about that journey from the Himalayas to running the search engine group here.
So, first of all, thanks, Bob, again. And funny coincidence, the year you joined Cornell is the year I joined this world.
Oh, my. I don't like this theme that's developing here.
It has to be an auspicious year because you came to Cornell. So, yeah, I was, as Bob was saying, I was raised in the Himalayas, the corner of the world where India meets Nepal meets Tibet. Okay? And I have distinct childhood memories of getting up in a town of, a few thousand people at 7,000 feet above sea level and looking out my window, 5 peaks in a row, 22,000 feet to 20,000 feet. And that's my earliest memory. I was just telling Bob earlier today, like people who grow up near the ocean, how water calms them down. Same holds for me with pine smell in mountains. And so that's what I was as a little boy, sliding on those pine needles, despite my parents saying not to do that. And had a wonderful childhood in a loving family, and went to college in India studying computer science, which is in a university which is now an IIT, one of these premier institutes in India that you've heard about. When I was there, it wasn't yet an IIT. And from there, I came to University of Minnesota, Duluth of all places. It has to be about cold weather and mountains. And so in Duluth, I came and I studied with one of the professors, Professor Donald Crouch. And it's a funny story. We'll go into it at some later point so as to how I got into IR. But Don Crouch introduced me to IR. And then he says, you should go get a PhD. And I said, come on, man, PhD is not for me. I'd much rather be drinking and hanging out. And he said, no, you should go get a PhD. I said, where should I go? He goes, well, there's this great professor at Cornell, and you should go get a PhD with Jerry Salton. And I said, look, he's the father of the field I'm studying, man. That would be an incredible honor. So he said, yeah, no, you should go. And I said, okay, whatever you say. So I applied only to Cornell to go to grad school. And for those of you who went to grad school, you remember you had to write a statement of purpose selling yourself, right? The last sentence of my statement of purpose said, if I'm ever getting a PhD, it's with Jerry Salton at Cornell, or I'm not getting one. They took the bait. And here I am. So those were my wonderful Cornell years, 92 to 96. I finished Cornell and went to Bell Labs and had great 4 years there as an academic. And right, in those 4 years somewhere, my good friend Krishna Bharat, who works at Google and is my office mate, around 99 time frame, he came to Google and he met me in a conference. We were having beers and he goes, you know what? You should come to Google. And Krishna was single then, and our second one was on the way. So I tell Krishna, you're single, you got no responsibilities. I got 2 kids, almost. I work for a big company, AT&T. Google schmoogle, you're all gonna die. One year later, I was at Google, and finally I bought Krishna that coffee that I owed him. So that's my story, and now I came to Google, and I was an IR academic. I'd been doing IR for 8-9 years. And IR is the field of information retrieval, which is the academic foundation of modern search that Jerry Salton invented as it exists today. And I came here and I said, I have been teaching this stuff for 8 years. I don't want to read any code. I want to write code like any software engineer. And I said, why don't I write what I have learned all these years? And so I wrote a new search system, which is Google Search System today, of course, with an incredible team that we are here today. But that's how I get to claim the credit for the good work that my team has done. Okay? And that's how I'm here today.
So when my colleagues heard I was going to get to ask Amit questions, they said, ask him how the search engine works. Ask him how many, he's not going to tell you much, but ask him these things. Like how many parameters, how many knobs are you twisting and adjusting, and how often do you do it? So
you should feel free to ask me whatever question you want, right?
Yeah.
I've been well trained.
Right, okay.
So there's this saying in my group, right? New person joins in, we take him out drinking. We get them 4 drinks, okay? 4 drinks minimum drinking. If they start talking about previous jobs of theirs, out of here, okay? So that's how we maintain the secrecy of how Google search works, is by drinking tests. And they gave me the 8-drink test and I survived. So you can ask me whatever questions you want. I will tell you the drinking story. But, to your main question of how many knobs, how many parameters there are in Google search system, Google search system is built upon the academic foundation of IR. And what we have done is we use hundreds of signals to find which 10 documents out of billions are relevant for your query. And there are literally hundreds of signals there. However, the beauty of IR and the beauty of the system is that we have mixed those signals in a principled way that human beings inside Google, engineers, still understand how the system functions. And that's the beauty of it. Because if people don't understand how your system is functioning, and we don't understand when our system goes wrong, how it's going wrong, we would never be able to improve it. And the beauty is in the simplicity that we have taken hundreds of pieces and assembled them in a way that we can tell structurally it's sound, and just in case the building is a little shaky, which piece is making it shaky, and then we go fix or improve that piece. Sometimes we We constantly add new pieces to the building and make it higher and higher, which in our case is better and better search. So just last year, we launched 400 changes, 400 plus changes to our search system. And the natural instinct people have when they hear me say that is, oh man, this has to be complex. But if you design a system well, you can actually build a very simple system, make those many changes, and still understand it.
Well, I remember when Amit talked to a standing room only audience of Cornell undergrads about that search engine, the questions went on and on because of the worry about how do you prevent all these attacks and gaming the system. And that story got maybe too technical for me to pursue that now, but I'll tell you, it's an amazing story of how you stay ahead of thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands, who are trying to game that search engine for their own purposes. But another question I wanted to ask you is from my own personal experience about the Google spell checker. I mean, this thing is like amazing to me, and I'm wondering, is it really amazing? Is that spell checker one of the best around, or am I being fooled by something?
This spell checker that we run is indeed by far the best ever invented anywhere, by a large margin. And that's about as modest as I'm going to get this evening. But indeed, the fact is that this spell system knows that Kofi Annan, spelled one way, is very different than coffee cup. And if you can say the same thing, if you use the same letters to spell out the first word, depending on the second word being Anand or cup, it will correct it to the right place. That's just a simple example. It does many more wonderful things. And there is the one fundamental principle behind our spelling system is simple algorithms, lots of data, really powerful. Okay? People sometimes don't pay enough attention to how much simplicity in algorithms can buy you. So what we have built this spell suggestion system on is observing our users type queries into Google year after year, query after query, and that amount of data, coupled with very simple algorithms, produces a spell system which is far better than anything ever that has been produced, and we are constantly improving it. So for example, last year, we launched this spell system in 26 new languages, and I think the last few languages that we launched this in was Albanian, Afrikaans, and so on and so forth. So that's the beauty of data. When you build simple things, then you can very easily take it out to the world without having to do a lot of work and make it work in each and every language and so on and so forth.
So here's a question that a lot of my colleagues wanted me to ask, which is about the way we teach programming. So are the universities connected to the way you all program? Should we be stressing cloud computing more? Should we worry about distributed computing as a fundamental that we teach earlier? What do you think about us versus our education versus your needs?
The answer is obvious. Just tell your students not to ever read code, but just write code. Programs. But, in all honesty, it's been a while since I followed one of the university curriculums. I remember from 10, 15 years back, the one difference that I found in a university curriculum on programming and our needs out here was, in the real world, seldom do you walk in and say, here, go write thousands of lines of program. Every new programmer who walks into an existing company is looking at an already existing big system, sometimes too big, millions of lines of code. Okay? And most of our coursework and lab work associated with coursework, 432, 433, so on and so forth, still is in a mode where students write standalone programs of relatively small size. Small size is not a bad thing. It's just that they never have a big context of a system. And that made it harder for me for the first time when I started dealing with big systems. So as to all my practice of programming was walk up to a computer, okay, today I feel like writing a program that will play chess. So I wrote it. However, there were no users. I was toying around. I was playing with it myself. And in the real world, there's always a bigger context. You seldom write these small programs or small scripts to do things. You write it under a big umbrella of an existing code base. And I wish there was much more of that during my Cornell years and my earlier college education. I benefited from the fact that Jerry Salton and his students had already built a big system that was out there, though not with so many users, but the smart search system that Jerry Salton and his students wrote when he was at Harvard in the early 60s and brought to Cornell, and it evolved in Cornell for 30 years. Being the student of Jerry Salton, I had to write code in that context of a big system. It was not as big as Google's code base, but it was plenty big to at least for me to understand the architecture problems and the design concepts behind it. And that helped me a lot. And I wish more and more we did that with our students, where we have some existing thing that people have to plug things into and understand the whole context.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A question that moves up the scale toward how research in this field is going to develop. You yourself said many times that most of the fundamental ideas in information retrieval came out of universities. And you were you went to one of the pioneering institutions in that area. Nowadays, how are universities going to be able to play that kind of a role?
That's a question that I often get in every academic conference I go to, whenever I talk to one of my faculty friends. So as to how can they now influence this big, fast-moving field that has taken on a life of its own in the commercial world? And that's a very good question. The simple answer that I have come up with, which is not a very intelligent answer, but the simple answer that I have come up with is going to grad school or going to school in general gave all of us the discipline of critical thinking, where my advisor taught me to question my thoughts before I questioned anyone else's. That's a hard trick to learn, to criticize yourself before you do someone else or someone else's work. And that is still being taught plentiful in grad schools and schools around the world. And those students, they come to the real industry out here. You know, I have numerous colleagues from Cornell who are sitting out here today, and other great institutions who are out, you know, who are at places like Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, all other good companies. And those people have developed that discipline and learned some things along the way that have helped us get here. Now, that's not a very intelligent answer. That's a generic answer. Okay? The harder question, which I have not yet been able to answer, that I hope some of you would help me answer one day, is what happens to an academic field when it is happening in the real world. So, when chip design happened in Intel and AMD and other companies, how was the academic work in chip design influential to these companies? Did chip design take a life of its own in the fab units of Intel and AMD, or the academic world had heavy influence on that? I haven't yet discovered the right answer. I can do these case studies one after the other, take router design or networking. You know, how much did Cisco and so on run away with the future of this technology and academia, which basically gave birth to all this? What happened after that? That's happening to search today.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting answer, because we're seeing now the Intels and AMDs coming to us about multi-core architectures and saying, we're going to have to do the whole thing over again, and we need you on the ground floor. That's very good. What you said about critical thinking reminds me of another question we get a lot. So one of the hallmarks of an educated mind, an educated undergraduate, for example, is the ability to think critically. Do you think there's a new kind of critical thinking that we need to teach because of digital information? Being able to assess what they get back from search engines, what they read in Wikipedia, and so forth?
Indeed, that's a very good question. Let me just hold that question for a bit and go back to the previous question of, there are so many hard problems for us to solve today, Google, that we wouldn't be able to do it without academia. Take a very simple example. We change our algorithm 400 times or more a year. How do you know that each and every change has benefited our users? It's a very hard question because relevance of results is somewhat subjective. Okay? There's no black and white. It's all shades of gray. More relevant should come ahead of less relevant, and so on and so forth. So search engine evaluation, for example, is a field where academia can do some critical thinking that we on our quarterly deadline can't do. Okay? And it doesn't really require that much infrastructure. So there are lots of hard problems out there that we haven't solved yet. And without academia, we won't be able to ever solve. And some of the great work done in the field of clicks by Thorsten in the department and so on has been seminal, and that kind of stuff is just critical for real things to happen. Now, going to your question about critical thinking. So the web or the internet has this beautiful property that anyone can say and give you information that they have gathered in their own personal experience. However, it also brings a very nice umbrella of anonymity to that information. And that is a boon when you're dealing with societies where that is absolutely necessary to get information out. For example, some countries where information is not flowing freely. It's important to have that layer of anonymity preserved so that citizens and human beings can communicate their experiences to the rest of the world without the cost of persecution. However, the beauty of that anonymity, if used wrongly, can get you a lot of information which is very wrong. So just start as a thought process. If you start doing searches for potentially alternative treatment for chronic diseases, arthritis, and so on and so forth, there's a lot of good information out there, and there's a lot of not so good information out there motivated by commercial interest. And it would really hurt the society if people said, I read it on site X, thus it must be true. Okay? And I wish it had never happened before, but the truth is that I have found reporters who should remain unnamed, who read a certain page and then write it down in their story without checking the facts. They get paid to check the facts. Okay? And that critical thinking has to be developed during undergraduate program, and not only in computer science, but pretty much in the entire educational system, repeatedly telling our students that you have to triangulate, you have to get to the bottom of the right information rather than just trust any site. Otherwise, it can hurt you, and it does hurt people.
Yes, that's a topic that fascinates me a lot, this critical thinking about digital information, because one of the goals of our Faculty of Computing and Information Science is to teach a course in either information science or computer science to every Cornell undergrad. And one of the justifications for that is you're going to need it to be able to think critically in the digital age. And, if we had time, I'd love to go more deeply into that. But there's another line of questioning that I get when I'm out here. It's really interesting that we get pumped up by the technology that we run into. And that's why Cornell deans and presidents and other people are out here listening to the Valley, taking the pulse, trying to find out what's happening and where it's at. In fact, we have our college advisory board meeting right here in Palo Alto, or right over there in Palo Alto. And Amit is one of the members of our very small, very elite board of 8 leaders in the Valley. But one of the other things we hear out here is a fear. I would say over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been more concern. Some of the alums will tell me, you know, there is a dark side to computer science. And I never recognized that myself for quite a while because I'm a gung-ho computer scientist. I love our systems. I think we've done a lot of good for the world and will. But you hear out here the concern that there's a big brother society being created and we're losing our privacy. And when they worry about it now, they worry as much about the big companies as they do about big government. And you'll hear on the radio and in speeches of people who are very keen, like Bill Moyers gives these wonderful speeches about the internet saving democracy, but he also says maybe some of your technology is going to create the big brother society. And people will think about Google in that context inevitably. So I'm wondering...
I was wondering if you will ever get to that.
Yeah. So I wanted to soften, that was my softening of this question.
So this is a very good question, a very important question in front of society today. So as to all the information that is out there and what people do to get this information by searching Google, other search engines, how much of their privacy is compromised in that process? So I can speak from a Google engineer perspective, and I can say a few things first as an individual, and then I'll say a few things as a Google engineer perspective. As an individual, me and my family are avid Google users. Each and every query that I have typed has been in Google. If I had a knee injury, Google knows that, okay? And so on and so forth. And I personally feel comfortable, more comfortable than I would have if I didn't work at Google, of what would happen to that data, what would happen to my queries, and so on and so forth. Privacy is one of the most important things that we discuss at Google. It's near and dear to us because each and every one of us is an avid Google user. And if anyone's privacy is compromised, it's mine first, right? And we have strict policies like even I, as one of the top Google engineers, cannot look at logs unless I sign a whole legal agreement of why I am going to look at those logs. And despite signing that legal agreement, I am not allowed to look at the logs that I can identify anything or anyone. Okay? And this is the topmost Google engineer talking. There's a logs policy that I have to sign my third child, third born to, if I were to look at logs. So that's the personal side, because I care about my privacy, and I know how deeply we care about our users' privacy, my privacy, I am my user, and how we protect it. So Google has such a strict logs policy, and you might have heard stories along the lines of when the government subpoenaed all the search engines, everyone else but Google complied, and we took the government to court on that. Okay, and we won. We did not divulge our logs. But it's important. It's important to keep pushing us for privacy and having strict policies so that never ever is anyone's privacy compromised because of Google or any other search engine. Okay? What more can I tell you about privacy policies? So the thing that one should also keep in mind is Google knows quite a bit about your queries and so on and so forth, but there are many other entities in the chain. If privacy is compromised in any of those pieces, links in the chain, it's much worse. So take your ISP, for example. Not only does your ISP know which queries you are typing into Google, which Google knows, it also knows which sites you are going to, each and every one of them. It also knows, by the way, what your credit card number is and who you are and where you live. We don't know any of that. So clearly, Google has a higher responsibility because we are so successful. So clearly, we should be held to a much higher standard. But when thinking about privacy, you need to think of the entire chain from your keyboard to the servers, and the weaker link is the worrisome part.
So I think it would be good if we could open up the questioning to you all now. And maybe we should make sure, you might not get the question you wanted. You might not have gotten it from me, and you might not get it from them. So is there anything you want to just say outright? Like, you should know this, whatever. And then we'll get to questions.
Well, I could say one thing for sure. If it was not for Cornell, I wouldn't be here. And that's all I wanted to say in India. We can take questions.
Yeah, so we have mics around.
You make changes to your MAPS program. Are you involved with that? Do you have part of that? Or is that one of the search things that you work with?
Yes, I'm part of the team that runs our search algorithms.
Oh, okay.
So clearly, any change that is made, I'm partly involved.
Well, the latest change that I've observed has a whole tutorial that comes up as soon as you try to get into the new maps. And I would expect that may be because a lot of people have not been able to intuitively get into it. Personally, I haven't been able to intuitively get into it. What do you do about changes that you think are reaching the user, but then you get feedback that it's not?
I think Google, not only in this case, but in all cases, thinks on its feet. And that's why we are so agile as a company. So we have made mistakes before. If this particular example, which I can't relate to right now, but if this was an example of that, we basically listen to our users, get the feedback, and we basically fix it as soon as we can. Okay? And we think on our feet, we make all these changes, and we listen back. We listen back to the bloggers from the blogosphere. We listen back to our avid users. Sometimes I listen back from my wife. That one I fix the next day, by the way. So clearly, we think on our feet, and our users they love us, and we thank them for the love they've given us. And basically, if we don't listen to them, we should be short.
Competition is great, and Bill Gates has always said that he's constantly looking over his shoulder. And I wanted to ask you what your opinions are about Cool and some of these other search engines that are...
You started with the answer yourself. Competition is great, and I deeply respect all the competition we have. If it were not for our wonderful competition, my good friends work there. My good friends work at Yahoo. My good friends work at Microsoft. These are great places to work. These are good people. These are good companies. Some of them I truly love drinking with. These are great, great people. And if we are better off today because we have this competition, and the more, the better, because it keeps us honest, it keeps us lean. The only way you win is not by hoping someone else will stumble, because those companies die who think their opponent would stumble. The only way you win as a company is by running fast. You run fast, and faster, and faster, and you win. If we didn't have anyone behind us, we wouldn't be running as fast. It can get tiring.
Over here.
Go ahead, Jen.
Behind me.
Going back to the question about privacy, could you address maybe what might be the other half of that question? I imagine you're very aware of the issues you talked about not wanting anyone at Google to see your information. But what about when it's just automated? What about the issues of privacy involved if you automate something to go and do things? Because I don't think that would give you that same gut-wrenching fear. So where do you draw the line on selling things based on your knowledge, and which knowledge is okay to sell based on and which isn't?
So that's a very good question. What about programs scouring through these logs and so on and so forth? And I think all of us, including myself, when we had earlier debates, put ourselves in the following situation. We type an email to someone, my brother, my sister, my wife, my family, my associates. And these web-based email systems take that text, take it to auto spell checker on their servers, read it, and spell correct it. How do we all feel about that? I think most of the people are kind of okay with that, right? And under that paradigm, as long as you have kept policies very, very strict, that there can be no individual identified and leaked, then our Gmail program, for example, based on the same text that we get to do spell checking, also presents some contextual ads on the side which you have seen and you're probably referring to. Now, I can understand if one feels that spell checking is okay, but that is not. But in some sense, they are kind of similar algorithms running, determining what words there are in an email. So I think with strict policies and strict privacy preservation, making some algorithms that run over these things is okay. For example, we run some of the best synonymy system in the world. You don't have to say Ramstein AB. You don't have to say airbase. You can say Ramstein AB. Google understands it's airbase. And it's done by actually looking through those logs and saying these two words might mean the same thing. So clearly, right, there's strong benefit. We have been able to improve our search engine spelling is an obvious example using that type of information. However, no human being should be able to identify another human being, and privacy should be very, very strict.
Hi, Amit, how do you do? So I'll try to squeeze in 2 questions. The first is, you sound like a fun guy to drink with, so where do you drink? And where did you drink at Cornell? Because you've done a lot of drinking.
So let me answer the latter one first. At Cornell, wherever I could afford, I was a grad student. So Chapter House, various other places like that. And now it's not that much. Occasionally we'll have company. I have some good bottle of single malts. I have one in my office too, by the way, for occasional Fridays. And that's what we do.
Now, I asked you that so I could soften you up for this. Okay. So you know that web search is a very different game than enterprise search. You're talking about different algorithms. You're talking about different types of problems, some different problems you have to wrestle with. Could you comment a little bit first on Google's efforts in enterprise search to the extent that you deal with them, number one, and maybe what Google's plans are in the enterprise as far as search is concerned? And number two, how you see integrating more meaning, whether you want to call it a meaning in a semantic web context, but how you could bring more meaning to pattern recognition.
Okay. That's a very good question. Enterprises struggle with search. It's an important problem, and there are several great companies out there who build enterprise search. We happen to think we have a great product, and it has been very successful. You'd be surprised how well our algorithms, PageRank and so on, work even on enterprises. Our customers, some of the big ones, are always wowed by the search result our enterprise box produces. So clearly, there needs to be some tailoring of algorithms for enterprises. However, it's really not that much. Simplicity really works. It's beautiful. Okay. Now, I can't say enterprise search is by any means a solved problem. It's a hard problem, and we are working on it, and others are too. And once again, competition keeps us lean and running fast. Where we are going on enterprise search, I take the 8-drink test, and so I, of course, can't tell you where we are headed on enterprise search. But clearly, it's a very important problem, and as enterprises grow and the information grows, which has been great and still growing exponentially, the problem's not getting easier. So do everyone, please, keep thinking about it, keep working on it, and that'll help. You can answer that question.
In the context of looking at enterprise data, in other words, behind your firewall, looking through your email, your documents, etc., as opposed to looking on the web.
I don't have any real background in this field at all, but what you say about logs is news to me. Does Google keep track of every of every search I've made over the last 10 years in your logs?
No.
And what do you need them for, and how long do you have to keep them? If you get rid of them after 3 days, then you don't have to turn them over to anyone.
Yes, that's a very good question. And clearly you know a lot about it, of course. To be asking me such an intelligent question. So Google's logs policy, which is written down, is that we discard all logs after 9 months. And so we do keep logs and aggregate them to learn things like spelling correction, for example, out of those logs. The policy is well written, it's documented, and even when we retain logs, no one's personally identifiable. So,
But if I make a search a day for 90 days, are those all tied in with my computer, all of those 90 searches in the log?
Depends on how your ISP does IPs. Okay, that's the real answer. I can go into all the technical details of that, but we cannot, once again, no one can see those, so that's the first thing. No one on this earth can see that. And we have very strict policies on deleting all logs and aggregating information as soon as we can. The benefit that comes out of those logs is things like we know that people who type this also type that, thereby we can offer you spell correction. If we didn't know that over a large sample of population over an extended period of time, we wouldn't be able to do that. And so those benefits are out there. They're measured. Spell checking is one of our most used features. And clearly, that has to come with a lockdown privacy policy that no one is identified by anyone, and which is what we maintain here.
Well, but still, you know that it's in the log, you know that it's the same person logging in all these times. You may not know who.
Not necessarily. That's the point, right? It's not necessarily. Depends on how IPs are assigned at your ISP. Yeah. Back there.
You mentioned that the algorithms are changed quite rapidly, more than once a day on average, it sounds like. Maybe a simplistic question, but I'm curious. What are you solving for, and how do you judge success?
That's a wonderful question that I alluded to in context of evaluation. When we are making those many changes, how do we know we are not going around in circles? And how do we know that we are doing positive hill climbing, we're going higher? And we have strong evaluation technology inside. Recently, we have been writing blogs on Google's official blog on how we do all this. And the latest one that came out yesterday or day before is on exactly your question on evaluation, written by Scott Huffman, who's a colleague of mine, on how do you know that a certain change is positive in aggregate. And those evaluation methods that were developed, some of those in IR community, things like recall precision, I won't go into details, but basically the game at the end of the day is to say this is good, not good. You only launch the good ones.
So, Google assumes that the search is initiated with keywords, and obviously there's other things that you can imagine that a search could be initiated with, and so, Microsoft just about PowerSet, which is more of a full sentence that you type out instead of just keywords. What's Google seeing in terms of trends, and is keywords it in terms of initiating search, or are there other upcoming trends?
That's another great question. Clearly, keywords is not it. Search is not done. Search is not solved. There's a lot to be done. We are getting started. That's what keeps me so engaged and busy. Then one can go into technologies of which technology is next technology. PowerSet is a great company. Microsoft bought them. I'm sure they will do great things with them. Then, but the question is, what is the next thing that would help our users? And we are discovering it as we go. I have strong beliefs on, what would help our users. Just think about the searches you did in some of the search engines 10, 12 years back, AltaVista, InfoSeek, and various other search engines, and think about what you ask Google today. What you ask Google today, you didn't dream of being answered 12 years back. So search technology, even though it may be called keyword-based, has come a long way, and it does things that people wouldn't imagine a keyword system does. And I gave you examples along the lines of, when you type the word AB, if the other word in your query is Ramstein, it means airbase, and we know it. And if the other word in your query is bed and breakfast, then it's Alberta. We know it. Okay? This is not what you normally associate with a pure keyword-based system. There's a lot of semantics that goes into it. Now, sentences and so on are one particular form of structural analysis, and I don't want to go into the technical details of it, but clearly search engines have come a long way in understanding what you're asking for. And we have not come far along enough. And that's what would happen over the next decade. Search would keep improving tremendously. It will get integrated in your lives much more than it is today. With mobile devices, now if I travel for a day or two, I live off of this thing. Okay? Or my new other phone, which is showing up soon. Clearly it's getting integrated, but it's still not fast enough. These devices are getting there. It takes a while. Search will get integrated in your lives. You would think of it as, oh, how could I live without that? And I don't know what it would be, but it would be there. It would be personalized to you. It would be on a mobile device. And it would do magic. Because some people already say search does magic, but I'm sorry, being the magician, I know where the hole in the jacket is. Okay? Clearly, it would just go far along. You would ask queries that you don't ask today, and it would be personalized to you on a mobile device.
There's been a lot of great discussion about IR and data and algorithms, but there's really been no discussion about Google's business, which is advertising. Uh-huh. And I just want to ask you about how Google and how your team reconciles the need to provide consumers with access to information with an advertiser's need to create meaningful advertising opportunities that might not have existed otherwise.
Yeah, the answer is very simple to that. There is a Chinese wall between us and the ad system. The ad system can never tell me what to do or what not to do. Ads are clearly demarked on the page in different color so that our users understand that these are things that if you click on, they're sponsored links. We make money off that. We do not mix ads in our search results. We do not take any money from anyone to be either included in our index or placed anywhere on the results section, the organic results section of the page. There's a clear separation between these two teams, and the ad system cannot influence what we do. In my lifetime, I have made decisions on search side which have lost us millions of dollars in a quarter. Okay? I knew that would happen, and it did happen. But our CEO and Larry and Sergey, both the founders of the company, walked into that meeting and said, is it good for our users? And we said, yes, we believe it is very good for our users. Then he says, why are you talking about it? And that's the philosophy we maintain to date. And as long as I'm with the company, we will maintain that philosophy.
When I was at Cornell, I had a little dispute with the health center. And it wasn't until my senior year of my undergrad that, and at the time at the health center, they said, well, have you talked to the ombudsman? And until that point, I didn't even know that guy existed. And I realized that actually it took one call, and they took care of everything. And I guess I was thinking that as Google has grown, I think we've all come to know and love Google because I don't know what I would do without it at this point. But I've always kind of thought of it as a warm, fuzzy teddy bear that I could trust, And but as Google has grown, there's been a lot of concern, especially in the blogosphere, that there's no transparency. there is a great deal of power invested in one private entity, well, publicly traded private entity, but is there a third-party ombudsman? I like you, I trust you, that you're saying that nobody's looking at these logs, but I have to take your word for that. And I would feel more comfortable if there was somebody. They don't have to tell me what is there, but have you considered, engaging a third party to make sure that that transparency is there, at least at a level that I can say, yeah, I trust this guy, so I'm going to trust you.
Yeah, that's a genuine question, very good question. Two things I'd like to say. Number one, that's a good suggestion. I'm not the person who runs the privacy part of the company. I will take it to the person and see how they feel, if they've done it, if they have considered doing it. But on the other side, right, Google, I can say this again and again, cares deeply, and I am a user as well. And Google, search engines are very easy to switch, right? That's how we built our business, by people switching away from some other search engine to us. And we care deeply about our users, and that's why we have been this successful. And the day we break that trust, we will lose. Okay? And we should. Yes.
The question I guess I have is you've been talking about the words and ideas put together and the history really of thinking, which would be phenomenology, if I'm right. And the question I have is, academically, when I was at Cornell, there was a Dewey Decimal System when you went to a library, and you organized things by thoughts, and you would separate cookbooks, like you would get recipes from cooking the books, like we are now finding out in the rest of the world. But the point is Google looking at those issues in terms of how you organize thought? And two, per the magazine headline, is Google making us stupid by just putting 2 words or 3 words together, and that's all we need to know? We don't need to know the whole story anymore. Or is that really, is there a bigger agenda for a Google to say there are areas of thought that really matter?
Well, that's a loaded question, actually. I'm not an expert in this. At Google, our job is to get our users to what information they are looking from the highest quality source as soon as possible. We don't want to hold them on our site. And as we were talking about earlier, I think this critical thinking, I have 2 kids. I have to teach them myself. Just don't go read a website and do your homework, okay? Because that's your natural instinct. As a parent, I have that responsibility to teach my kids that. Now, internet has, of course, made that easier, but those distractions existed before in the other world as well, right? That would be an equivalent of just, picking one tiny, thin book and not reading 3 different books on the same subject before you come to the conclusion of whatever you want to come to. This has just become easier, but all those issues existed before. As parents, as society, as teachers. We need to teach our students and our kids to have that critical thinking and not just read a 1 page somewhere and then write a term paper. So, Google's job is to serve its users as fast as possible and allow them getting different views on our front page. You have no idea how many press wars we have been through for putting differing views on various sensitive topics on the front page.
We're going to take 2 more questions.
You alluded briefly to the cool new cell phone that's coming your way in a couple weeks. And I wanted to ask if that's also, if it's starting to create whole new challenges for the search side of the business. Is it just more of the same? Just it's a smaller device with a smaller screen, or are you having to almost reinvent search completely to deal with a much larger number of devices?
So the answer is neither black nor white. It's gray, in that we have to rethink search interfaces tremendously for these devices. And once again, as soon as these devices come out, I take one and start using it as a user, again, to see what my users would be feeling when they run into this. And, People who have gotten email from me in this room on why is this so broken and why is that so broken, I go yelling and so on and so forth. So as a user, I see what's broken, but we have to rethink in this much interface. How are you going to get the information that our user needs to them real fast? So for example, location is far more critical on a mobile phone where you are than it is in general search. Okay, so gearing our results toward local information is far more critical on a mobile phone, where we have had to rethink that. There are many such things, this is just one example of it, that we pay very close attention to our user experience on mobile phones. And clearly, the newer generation of mobile phones are allowing us to do more and more, and that's a big boon for our users. The mobile phone itself, and then the ability to get to richer information on those phones. And we think about it every day. We have large groups devoted to exactly that.
Hi there. I think Google is terrific, but I have to admit that there are times where I'm not finding what I want to find, and that's because I never seem to think the same way everybody else does. So my first question is, who do I talk to about that? Seriously, because there are things other than what everybody else seems to do. Just as an example, I was doing a search at my brother's house in Maryland, same exact search I do at my house in Marin, and I got way different answers because it thinks I want information from there, but I don't know how to tell it that's not what I want.
That's you can start with me, because I'm here. You can tell me how it's not working, and then I'll go figure out why it's not working.
All right. Well, afterwards, I mean, I'd love to just be able
absolutely.
to get
but
afterwards.
What's a big boon to a large percentage of our users? So, for example,
right, I'm always in that teeny weeny little percent. Trust me.
Yes, and that's where personalization comes in, and I'll go into that in a bit. But to a large percentage of our users, if you type bank in India, you're not looking for Bank of America. Or if you type bank in the UK, you're not looking for Bank of America or ICICI Bank, which is what we give them in India. Okay? So our job is to give the most locally relevant results globally. Okay? That's the motto we maintain. And clearly, there are oddities of our UI, user interface, which don't always communicate that fully. And there shouldn't be. And there are failure cases like the one you just mentioned. Right. And we're working on some of those things, but maybe we are just not doing the right thing. So I'd love to hear from you so as to what your experience has been. But then there's this other important piece of our search system where we personalize results to you as an individual. And if you log in while you're searching, we know about your location and so on better than the temporary location that we may be getting from some system, and then we won't make such stupid mistakes for you.
Well, I want to thank the audience as well as Amit. I know what you're experiencing because our undergrads would not let him stop, and he was tireless with them as he's been with us. But Amit, this was absolutely wonderful, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now what I'd like to do is for the last 10 minutes, we're going to do our open mic section, which is your chance to make an announcement to the audience and hopefully walk away with whatever connection you were dying to make when you first signed up for this event. So what I'd like you to do is, if you want to participate in open mic, if you could stand up and line up on the side of the room, and we'll make do about 10 minutes of announcements as quickly as we can. So what I'd recommend is, if you are a startup and you are looking for funding and you talk to me about this tomorrow and did not announce it tonight, I will kill you. Better yet, I won't help you. Or if you're looking for a job or have jobs or all those different types of announcements. So let's get that started now for anybody who wants to make an announcement. Yep. Up over here. Front of the room, lined up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bob Zeidman. I have two companies that are pretty small but growing. One is a consulting company that does IP litigation support, engineering support for intellectual property litigation. The other is a software company that creates software for comparing two programs to find out if one might be copied from the other, so you can see how these fit together. I'm hiring right now. I may be hiring for the software company pretty soon, but it's not clear. but I'm definitely hiring for the consulting company. If you're on the computer science list, I'm sure you've seen this already, but we've been having a really hard time. We need to find someone who's interested in the legal aspects of what we do, who's also got some years experience in programming, and who's interested in running the tools that we've developed, improving the tools we've developed. A lot of the algorithms we use, I think we run into the research that Google's doing when we're doing our research and doing our patents. So if you're interested in that kind of research, analyzing other people's code, getting involved in the legal system, please contact me.
You just pass down.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shrikant Sharma. I and my partner in the back, we have launched this India investment fund called the Spark Fund. You might actually have seen that on the Cornell website. The reason I wanted to kind of step up and just announce that is besides those that might be interested in, investments right now is a bad word, of course, but actually, surprisingly, this might be a value. But also, maybe it's not the best audience, but at the same time, we are looking for individuals that might be interested in the investment space. It's a very promising opportunity, that I think so at least. And I would love to talk to you folks if there's any interest. So you can reach me. I'll be around for a little while longer. Happy to chat. Thanks.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Pete Ippel. I'm an artist in San Francisco. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about environmental issues in my artwork. The most recent piece is called The Fantastic Solution to Global Warming. Been thinking a lot about that, energy solutions, that sort of thing. And just if any of you guys are needing, if you just bought a house or anything, if you need decoration, please see the website hypermodern.net. You can email me at pete@hypermodern.net. Thank you.
Hi, I have an announcement for software and web entrepreneurs. My name is John Skinner. I work in eco-technology at Intel. I'm also a member of Keiretsu Forum, which is an angel investment group. And on September 30th at Intel in Santa Clara, Keiretsu Forum and Intel Capital are going to be co-hosting a symposium for web and software entrepreneurs to discuss different funding alternatives and how to raise capital for your startup. So if any of you are interested, there's information on the Cornell Bay Area Yahoo group, or see me afterwards. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ofer Ronen, and I have a startup named Sandori. We're a 10-person company, and we're actually looking for software developers. We're working in a cool incubator in Sunnyvale, and it's in the search business. So if anyone's interested, please come by and talk to me. What specifically? Oh, okay. So there's a $1 billion industry around monetizing domain names, and we have advertisers bidding directly to get traffic from domains. And so laptops.com, HP, and Dell are bidding for that. It's just an example, but we do that on a large scale.
Hello, my name is Rick Spratt. If anyone is interested in bringing their product to market and needs program management, I'm looking for an opportunity in that area. I have quite a few years of experience bringing successful, technically challenging products to market. So if you're interested, stop by and see me afterwards. Thank you.
My name is Eitan Ayalon. I'm going to be going drinking afterwards if anybody wants to join me. And hopefully Amit will join us. My company is Global Tech Research. We just moved out here from New York a couple weeks ago, and we are building a platform to speed the pace of emerging technologies development. We've got 3 advisors out here, a partnership with a $5 billion software company that is a Google competitor, although we're not a competitor of Google. And if you are a CTO or a chief architect candidate, please come see me.
My name is Jonathan Spear. I'm with a company called Blinks, B-L-I-N-K-X. It's a cutting-edge video search company. We're looking for really good engineers and also some good salespeople. If any of you are looking for opportunities with a company that's been listed as one of the fastest-growing companies on the web right now, please come see me. After this presentation, I'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Trevor Goss. I'm founder and CEO of a company called Varus ID. We actually also just moved out here from the East Coast. Varsity is the network that connects you to your sports teams. If you think about sports teams, they're very information intensive, and then a lot of people are responsible for creating that information. Basically, Varsity brings those people and that information together in one place. I really have two announcements. We're kind of jointly looking for both investment and also talent, which is really why we moved. So.
Hi, my name is Ben Nurse. I'm currently a commercial real estate property manager in the Monterey area, and we're looking to move up to the Bay Area, or if you have contacts in Portland, that would be useful as well. Like I said, I do sales, real estate management. I have a tech background, but that's not relevant here, I guess. But if you know of anything, any leads that you can give me, that would be great. I'll be in the back.
So you want to do residential real estate sales in the Bay Area? Is that what you said?
Commercial or residential?
You talk to me later. So we have some-
Hi, my name is Ann Ting. I'm the founder and CEO of Fortressware. We provide a solution to help you protect the private information you send it to other people. We have just launched a new personal version called Personal Fortress that you could try. It's very simple to use. It's as simple as you send any document without protection to other people. And we're running an open beta, so you can go visit at www.personalfortress.com. It's PersonalFortress.com, and there you can sign up. And for everybody who complete our open beta, we'll offer you the initial release of Personal Fortress for free. So thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Laura Stewart, and rather than talking about business, I wanted to talk about a fun hobby that others might be interested in that you may not know exist. I didn't know this hobby existed a few years ago, which is board gaming, specifically European board gaming, which is orders of magnitude better than anything you may have seen in the American games you're used to, the Saris and Monopolies and so forth. I can give you where groups meet 3 times a week in 3 different areas, plus certain Saturdays. Just see me and I'll give you lots of information about it. And I guess business-wise, I am looking for a QA job.
Awesome. All right.
Hi, my name is John Zimmer. I just carpooled out from New York City to Palo Alto because I'm one of the co-founders of the Carpool application on Facebook, and we're looking for another developer. We just got one of the grants from Facebook, so we're expanding the team. Thanks.
And just 2 quick announcements. I just want to, again, thank the event staff. I want to make sure mention that the fact it's so hot in the room is not their fault. It's my fault for packing the room for about twice its capacity, but they were nice enough to indulge. And then I also want to mention, somebody mentioned energy. This year, it's such a hot topic, pun intended, that we're going to combine 3 events, which are major Cornell events, into one event on March 12th. The College of Engineering's annual alumni event is moving out here to Silicon Valley. The Cornell Silicon Valley annual entrepreneurship event and the Cornell Silicon Valley presidential event, which are normally 3 different events, one of them happening in Ithaca, will all be one day at the Computer History Museum, March 12th, all day long on the topic of energy and sustainable energy. And it's just going to be probably one of the best events we've ever done. So I hope to see you all there. So thanks again for coming tonight.